Good afternoon, everybody. I think just quick, little more introduction about what I do. I lead the technology and media practice at my firm, Khaitan and Co. I work with advertisers, brands, on anything that they do literally in the digital ecosystem. AI is, of course, the favorite segment right now. Everyone's grappling with it. Everyone's excited about it. A little bit of irony, though, from an advertising context, and this is really in the lighter note, is that in a room full of advertising regulators, advertisers, brands, professionals, I happen to be in the business that is barred from advertising. But I do work with advertisers and consult them to navigate through their journeys and their endeavors on the advertising side, more, of course, from a legal regulatory scope. I think we had a great context setting just before this session on ASCI's report. And I think some of the things that I took away and I make note of is that AI is no longer a buzzword. It's real. It's here across sectors, advertising being no different. From an advertising context, it has reshaped the ways of advertising. It has redefined the way brands today connect with consumers, create content, segment customers, and look at how to make advertisers and ads more relevant to different groups and different sectors. And then, of course, AI has speed and efficiency and the ability to process large amounts of data. So it's very relevant on the data analytics side of things. Me being a lawyer, I would, of course, also emphasize on the risks and challenges that come with it. And some of the things that we are still grappling with, not just in India, but across the globe, are issues around data privacy, concerned around IP ownership, the kind of data sets that are used, bias that is inherent to historic data used as training data sets, and ethical and responsible use of AI. So I think with that, the conversation today, and I have a stellar set of panelists, of course. The conversation today is around, while there is AI is perhaps the biggest opportunity that we have at hand. How do we navigate through it responsibly? What can organizations do to make their AI adoption more effective, but also not lose sight of the risks and challenges that it poses towards their organizational needs, but also from a more consumer interest focus? So with that, welcome everybody. My first question is really to everyone, so feel free. Maybe we'll start with Mary. A lot of buzz around how AI is going to impact human creativity. And does it replace it? Does it enhance it? So, just some thoughts on how that's going to be impacted and how that's looked at.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So, I think we all hope that AI will enhance human creativity and not replace it or supplant it. There are analogies of AI to other tools that humans have used throughout eternity to create pens, pencils, paintbrushes, pastels, whatever, and now it's another tool that can be used. And so I like to think of it that way. It's the potential, but of course, being mindful that, and the fears that people have, that if people will just rely on AI to create something and not use their own ingenuity and creativity, just the way we've heard concerns about having GPS means that people can't read a map anymore or can't find their way from one place to another without relying on GPS. You don't want to lose that part of your brain, that function. So I think, as we will see in a lot of areas with AI, it requires being mindful about the potential and the perils. But I do have hope that it's going to enhance creativity.
Kunal, you want to go next?
Yes, hello everyone. AI is one of the most overhyped and underappreciated forces. Overhyped because it's like there are these math geniuses who are in 8th grade and we're looking at their scores every single week and seeing who's beating each other. But why it's underappreciated, and this is what really matters, is imagine you have a polymath, someone who is the most intelligent being in your pocket on each and every subject, each and every topic in the universe, known and unknown. And it is for you as a human being to be able to enhance yourself through it. And do it through agents, do it through assistants, and do it in real time at a speed and a force that we have not seen in our lives. And that's what's really exciting.
Absolutely. Samir?
Oh, absolutely. I think, AI is here. We're all in a bit of denial. We all think it's still time, but it's faster than what we think. It's getting used, kind of extensively. But of course, it's something that, kind of will only get better with time. So this is not as if, it's like a tool, you come, switch it on, plug and play. It doesn't work like that. And so essentially, this is the reality. This is what the future is. And every technology comes with its good and bad, and therefore AI is no different, except that if AI used in the right way and kind of dealt with in the right way, can give you immense benefits. And we are seeing that in a lot of industries already. And I think this is something that will continue to evolve more and more.
Right. And Chandradeep, I know you're an academician and, you teach responsible marketing. So what are your thoughts on just the creative aspect of AI?
So right now I'm more an academician, and before that I used to be in the industry. So if I put on my ex-industry hat, I'm really excited about all the possibilities and opportunities that AI is creating. It's completely a game changer, and a lot more will happen, no doubt about it. And it's also a force that you can't wish away. It's there. We saw a lot of people 2-3 years back, 150 people, Nobel Prize winners who wanted AI to be slowed down and stopped and, regulatory guardrails, and it didn't happen because it's got a life of its own, right? But the academician in me really worries about, if I had to quote Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility. And it's moving so fast for all the use cases that are coming up, will change by tomorrow. So even before we've got our heads around what are the use cases, what are the guardrails, how do we handle it, somebody somewhere would have come up and created use cases. Many of them will be fantastic use of AI or speed, scale, all of that, hyper-personalization. But some of them will really push the edges or the boundaries of ethics, be it consumer privacy, whether all of that. In fact, I honestly think advertising as it exists today won't exist because, if I had to oversimplify, we do customer research, then we do content creation, and then we do selling and customer service. And I think it's all going to become a seamless thing with AI, because AI is going to figure out who the customer is, what are their vulnerable moments, and who needs what when, almost automate content creation in a hyper-personalized way. And the ad that you see, you can interact with, and that can become an agentic AI which can service you. And this will be a seamless thing, and it's already happening, right? So at which stage does the boundary get crossed is something that, right now it's mind-boggling. And we're cautioning ourselves, but I don't know whether, at speed at which moving, whether we are really well-equipped to handle all the possible use cases. And that worries me, honestly.
Right. Great thoughts. My personal thought on the creative aspect is that I feel like humans have infinite potential, and anything that assists us is only going to enhance our capabilities. So I really think that today maybe we have to rethink the ways of working, but at the end of the day, it is going to perhaps make us more efficient in every aspect, including creative aspects. Kunal, I'll move to you now, and this is slightly on a different tangent, but I'm picking up from what you said earlier, that AI is a force that we haven't seen so far in our existence, and it's unparalleled in that sense, but it is yet, it hasn't stopped evolving also. It is going on, right? Every other day as we talk about it, there's something or the other happening, some more use cases, some more tools, and so on. So in terms of just innovation, right, and the issues around it still remain. There are still issues around data privacy, protection, data, bias, ethics, so on. So how do we sort of balance this progress towards innovation and the issues that we already have, and perhaps which are going to be amplified as innovation also sort of goes on?
I think the introduction section that Parallel presented was just a beautiful articulation of this balance between innovation and responsibility. Now, this is not a zero-sum game. It's not you have to lose innovation to drive responsibility. You kind of have to drive both of them together, and that drives progress, that drives GDP, that drives growth. There are incredible amounts of technologies today, and my teams who are sitting up here are actually working actively with companies to harness how you can leverage AI without having to compromise. The amount of throughput and power that you have on your devices before it goes into a server, the technologies that you can use through something called privacy-enhancing technologies allows for you to do things today that we couldn't have done a year ago. And it's only getting better and better and better.
Right.
And the most important part, though, is can we as a collective actually align on a series of responsible AI principles that allow for self-governance, that ensures that we're building AI that is beneficial to humanity, that ensures that they don't have biases, that it is responsible, it gives trust and transparency back, and it makes sure that people are actually seeing incredible experiences that can surprise and delight them without having to worry about the underlying technologies that drive them.
No, fantastic. And I fully agree. I think what you're essentially saying is that conscious aspect of human when a build case is being out there needs to be applied at every point in time. Samir, on that note and, follow on from there. Again, use cases, innovation, builds, different sectors are using it differently also, right? Advertising happens to be a sector agnostic activity in some sense, but it is also a industry and a sector in its own. But moving to more sort of segmented sectoral use cases, and I know you lead a gaming company right now, you're the general counsel. So what are you sort of seeing in the gaming space? And the reason I'm bringing it up, gaming as a space is, one, of course, you're on the panel, but also gaming, I believe it's technology because it's software and a platform, and then it has a whole space of artistic work as well. So there is gaming and artistic, and it is run on ad spends and ad revenue. So it really has an intersection of everything, right? So just your thoughts on what's happening there.
No, I mean, absolutely. If you look at the gaming sector, it's pretty unique because technically, if I were to put it into, I'll come back to the responsible part, and I just want to give a prelude here, is that if you look at it, there's a platform, there is a game, and there are people. I think that's really what constitutes everything, and of course, the people are providing the game. So everything ultimately is really user. When user centricity, and we looked at it in the report saying eventually what really matters is user centricity. That's exactly what we believe as a principle. If you look at the game, and I kind of give a background to it, essentially if you look at it from the gaming perspective, right? Responsible gaming is really the critical piece because this is an industry which has, while we are often turned around and compared to gambling, betting, which is, of course, not what we do because there is a difference between skill and chance and all of that. I'm not going to get into the legalities because people are not here to listen to that. But having said that, the fact remains that, responsible gaming is at the forefront because if you have to build a sustainable business, you have to be responsible because ultimately your business runs with users. As I said, there's a platform, but ultimately it's the users. And if I have a user who's going to be only short-term, it doesn't help. And therefore, for me, as a game, it's important that whatever is done responsibly, which means that I do not want my users to be addicted. The reality is addiction is there everywhere. In fact, one of the largest addictions is food, which is why obesity is one of the highest, rates of addiction in the world. But having said that, we don't want people to be addicted. What we want people to do is play responsibly. And playing responsibly means is that you play for entertainment, you play for fun. But there are lines that cross, which means you're playing for fun, but then when that fun becomes, let me play for money to earn the money and make millions, that's not what games are for. And therefore, they start chasing losses. They start chasing money, and more money I need to go, and I'm losing, so I need to get more. Which also links back to the fact that if I'm advertising or I am turning around and targeting my users, I have to do it in a responsible manner, such that I am actually able to turn around and see who is the person or what he or she wants, or what can I show to them. Because I keep showing them, it's about winning big prizes, I am driving them towards the negative side. On the other hand, I'm showing them, this is something that's entertainment. And therefore, when I start to use AI for either my ads or targeting people, targeting individuals, it has to be in a responsible manner such that it has to be personalized, it has to be specific, but it has to be responsible where it does not turn around, exaggerate something. It does not give out the false part. It does not give out promises which are not going to get delivered anyway. I mean, the possibility of winning a game is purely on your skill. And definitely if you're playing with somebody else, somebody will have better skills. I mean, you look at cricket, right? The better team wins in the end. That's how it is. So same way, I think, from a pure gaming sector, AI is going to be used definitely in the advertising side, in the gaming side. We do build models, we do prediction models, we do turn around and see how people's gameplay is happening. We are able to predict patterns. We also use it for risk analysis, right? Is somebody a risky player? Is there fraud happening? So we use all of that, but eventually the whole piece comes back to how do I turn around and make sure that the AI that I use is getting done responsibly, which means that whatever I put as an input, I have to be careful of what I put in. And that's where I think the gaming industry is going to be very different. Having said that, again, gaming is something on its own, it's new and nascent. And then you have AI, which is, again, kind of developing. So we are trying to put a lot of new things onto new platforms and new things to turn around and develop. As time goes, we will have more things which will get developed. I think we'll have more clarity on how and where additional uses can happen. A lot of the personalized targeted ads, etc., will be something that will get better and better. There will be bad actors, there will be bad players who will do stuff, but we'll have to be careful of them.
So, Chandradeep, your thoughts on, you obviously look at people from different sectors. Just your thoughts of what you've seen as use cases from an advertising perspective, but across different sectors, and is it differing between one sector to the other?
I kind of like that initial framework that I saw the report about the 6 principles, because the actual applications and use cases will evolve. The 6th principle was about dynamism, and I think that's something that we have to keep in mind because use cases will evolve. But some of the things like privacy is something you will not, or exploiting vulnerabilities is something that you should not ever cross a line. And you use the word bad actors, and specifically in the context of gaming. But I think one of the problems that really it comes down to is the fact that, of course, there are industries where the vulnerability or the bad application or the power to do, temporary good for your own shareholders with a long-term detriment for the consumer is heightened. More importantly, and that is what we all in this hall need to worry about, it brings, it erodes consumer trust and brings disreputation to the whole industry in general. Something that I bother personally about being part of the marketing fraternity, and this is a 2022-23 report, globally, among all the professions that exist, marketing and advertising is the 3rd lowest. The lowest are politicians, the 2nd lowest are car salesmen, the 3rd lowest is marketing and advertising. We're all part of it, and we should seriously worry whatever. And a few bad actors can make that happen. And the power of AI to create those extreme situations that can create complete loss of consumer trust is what we need to worry about. And I think that is where we have to really be very, very careful about the guardrails.
Thanks for that. And maybe, Kunal, Sameer, Chandradeep, they have different touch points on responsibility around use of AI. So just from your background with self-regulatory bodies, with think tanks, do you feel self-regulatory bodies such as ASCI, for example, can play a role in implementing more responsible efforts, policies, and channeling some of these endeavors towards, let's say, even awareness around what should and should not be done. How do self-regulatory organizations or think tanks, for that matter, bridge the gap between these?
Yeah, so I actually think that AI presents a good opportunity for ad self-regulatory bodies to provide value. I mean, they already provide a lot of value to the ad ecosystem, but the ability of self-regulatory organizations to act more quickly than, say, government regulators can, and to bring to bear the knowledge of the industry participants that we have in self-regulatory bodies, to craft workable rules, to be thinking about the benefits and the risks, and to come up with frameworks that address those. It's really important. And I know ICAS, through its global think tank, is already in the process of doing that through the gathering research, what's been already done out there on consumer understanding and expectations and potential uses of AI. And then we'll present a report in a few months, we expect, that will provide a basis for the individual self-regulatory organizations to move forward and to think about sensible regulation of AI. I do agree that a lot of the concerns, I mean, someone said in the earlier presentation that, of course, existing rules, existing laws apply to AI. But the concern is how AI might be able to supercharge fraud, invasion of privacy, and the very benefit of AI that is really highlighted in the AdNext report often is this hyper-personalization, right? And the ability to craft really engaging content could also be used for harm. And that is where we and all the responsible companies, and responsible brands and advertisers in the room have to act really conscientiously and purposefully to ensure that they're not engaging in those negative behaviors, because the potential for harm is great. When you think about the potential to target a consumer, maybe a consumer is struggling with alcohol abuse and they visit a site for Alcoholics Anonymous, and then they get served with alcohol ads, or gambling, or a teenage girl who's concerned about anorexia or something and gets served with more ads for that content. The potential is very negative, and we've already seen concerns about what's happened in the social media world. Well, we all know that now, right? We've lived through the potential harm, so we have to be very conscientious and conscious to avoid having this happen in the AI space. So the time is now for guardrails to come up on a self-regulatory basis. It can be done more quickly. I know there are some laws being put in place, but we have the ability to do it more quickly and more sensitively and sensibly, and to really reflect the value of the brands who want to do this correctly and to employ all the advantages, but not go down the negative spiral of the potential bad uses.
Great, thanks, Marian. One of my thoughts on just responsible use is also that, yes, there are self-regulatory bodies who can help conversations and get people together, bring in ideas, and then there are regulators across the world who are looking at, different statutory frameworks and what works for which jurisdiction, and everyone is taking a different approach and so on. But there's still some time before we get to a point where there is actually a framework in terms of responsible use. But before that, I feel that all of us can emphasize on our own corporate efforts and policies and governance frameworks to follow, with the aim of use of AI responsibly, right? And that's the closing thought on this one. And Kunal, I'm coming back to you. And moving to the more business side of things, right? And some of the things, and this is coming from, partly from my work, because I'm in consulting and I end up working with sometimes really small players, sometimes mid-sized players, sometimes really large enterprises, right? And what I feel is that AI more definitely is a competitive advantage today, right? In terms of efficiency, speed, sometimes in terms of even projecting what your product is from a technology space perspective. So do you feel like, but also the deployment has, a massive amount of cost and effort today, at least. From your perspective and, given your background in Google as well, do you see that, how is that advantage versus disadvantage going to be bridged between smaller and larger players? And do you feel like larger players who perhaps already have a competitive advantage are going to have even more competitive advantage over smaller players? Or is it going to, balance the field in some way?
I'm this eternal optimist. I actually believe that it's going to fully democratize the way in which any company, whether large or small, interacts with technology. And I'll give you some great examples of it. Arpit and Saurabh sitting on the front row, please wave to everyone. Thanks, guys. They've hosted this week and last week a hackathon with hundreds of companies, large and small, and essentially said, here are some 0 to 1 technologies that you can go and build. And the examples coming back to us are truly transforming these companies, whether it's e-commerce or gaming or financial services or your classic brick and mortar FMCG. Like the biggest misnomer today that exists is, oh my God, we have to spend millions of dollars, crores of rupees to be able to even get to the first step. That's not true. Like I gave an example in a small presentation we did with Manisha on Monday that a foundation that's about to get set up spent 25,000 rupees and they were ready to go. 6 months. So I think we're seeing the green shoots of it becoming potential to be a level playing field. Now that said, a games 24/7 is far more complex. The requirements from a server side, an infrastructure, a tooling perspective will be different. So what you need here is not exactly cookie cutter. But there are solutions that are already available from an application perspective that help the SMEs that they did not have access to before. Only the hyperscalers with large pools of capital had. Now, if you fast forward this down, let's say a year, 2 years, let's not be surprised if the next billion-dollar company is a 6 to 10 employee company. Like that possibility exists today, which did not exist back in the day.
No, great. I actually didn't know that in terms of, advantages that are being offered to sort of smaller players, and the costs are phenomenally low, it seems. Great. But Samir, since, Kunal, of course, already brought you into the conversation, but I was anyway going to pick your mind on sort of the same topic. Right now, Games 24, larger gaming player in the segment, but their gaming as a sector is spread across really small, large players. Games itself are the hyper-casual games, and then there's real money, and then there's, all sorts of things. So the complexity is different, the scale is different, the target audience is different, or users are different oftentimes. So how do you see that? Maybe a Games 24, for example, has the potential to invest into AI capabilities. Maybe a small hyper-casual developer does not today. Do you sort of then see it differently?
No, actually, I see it exactly how Kunal's seeing it. Actually, that's the reality, because you don't need a lot of money to use AI to kind of invest in there. And the reality is that, yes, there's one difference, that how you use it and the uses that you have within organizations will vary. A large organization will probably have many more use cases. A small organization may not to start with, but eventually as they keep growing, they will use it. But it's no different how a large entity or a small entity turn around and use it. The cost is not really very high. Today, if you look at it, pretty much, the reality is, and I can say this safely, I'm sure there are people who may not agree with it. ChatGPT is free, right? You go in. Let's look at our legal fraternity. Everybody's turning around, generating drafts out of ChatGPT. What's the cost? Nothing. It's exactly the internet that you access. So to that extent, I don't think there's anything different. Of course, as I said, the big difference is going to be how you utilize it and what you utilize it for. Some of the places will be quite complicated, which means that the time taken could be a little more, right? But otherwise, I don't see any difference.
I do slightly disagree with you that, ChatGPT is generating all our drafts, but sure.
I'm saying majority. I'm not taking it away from you saying you do as well. But that's the reality. I mean, there's a team sitting right here. They tell me we generated the first draft like this.
Okay, great. ChatGPT is going to get me out of business very soon.
That may not happen. That I can tell you. Because there is an artificial intelligence and there's an actual intelligence. That's what lawyers will bring. So I will bat for the legal fraternity, trust me.
No, I'm just joking. I don't feel that at all. I, in fact, use both Gemini and GPT very, very often now. And, just an anecdote on this. I have one of my colleagues sitting somewhere in the audience here. He was, just a young graduate a couple of years back. And when he came in, ChatGPT at the time was, this is an era when people used to introduce ChatGPT over a dinner conversation and say, oh, it can write a poem. That era a couple of years back. So he came in, and then he started showing me these ChatGPT tools. And he said, you gave me this yesterday to work on. I finished it in 10 minutes. And, I was really overwhelmed with all of that. And I thought, what is this? And what is this kid? But today we've really, rethought how legal practice sort of works, ways of our functioning itself. And it's fantastic. I really see great advantages of that. On the point of bias, and I feel like any AI conversation today cannot be completed without that issue of bias being spoken about. Mary, I'll start with you first, right? And we do have that challenge consistently. Perhaps one of the reasons for that bias is that, the training is happening on what exists today. And it is not the fault of the tool or the developer, or so to say, but, just inherently the data historically that exists has its biases. And how do we sort of are there ways to address that? Are there ways to maybe program the algorithms in a way that are more inclusive and avoids this bias? Do you have any sort of thoughts on that? What can be done?
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to being conscious of the issue. Like I was saying before, we know that what the LLMs have been trained on is biased because it reflects the bias of humanity for eons, right? And so if you're using AI and add creative, then, it's always important. You can't just turn it over to the AI, right? You have to, and you wouldn't want to do that for a number of reasons, but to have that be on your checklist of things that you're concerned about, aside from accuracy and your message resonating and everything else, is there bias reflected in what the AI has created. At the same time, we have a cautionary tale with what happened with Google Gemini, right? When there was an attempt to be inclusive, and so you had asked questions about depicting the American founding fathers, and they were people of color, and that created a huge backlash. So you want to avoid that. But it's a matter of having this be something that's kept in mind and that the teams all have to be aware of. And hopefully people are. We've all. Well, I guess there's always a need for education. We know that AI hallucinates, for example, and makes things up, and yet there's people who continue to, even lawyers, who rely on it for their court briefs. Like, how many times do you have to hear that it's hallucinating, and no, you can't rely on it for case citations? The same thing in the ad community with creatives, and it's got to be incorporated into the ethos of the creators that the bias is something that you need to think about and check for.
Kunal, I'm going to pick your thoughts on the same question, given that I guess you see more of the innovation side plus the implementation side, both of it. So that's a great advantage. So in terms of bias, what is being done? How is it being thought through at the innovation side of things? That will be very helpful to have your thoughts on that.
I wanted to preface this, Mary. I think the Google example is a great one, the Gemini one. Machines make mistakes, as humans make mistakes. But I think what we have to do, and what Google is certainly doing with Gemini and DeepMind, is how can you take the widest data set that allows for the world's languages, the world's cultures, the world's context to be the underlying infrastructure that trains the models. Like if information was about structuring data, intelligence is about the understanding of that nuance.
Right.
The second is everything that you do from a reinforcement learning perspective has to also come with human intervention so that the next does not happen. And when it does happen, you have red and blue teams that actually can flag it very quickly before it goes out into the ether. And we have to do it at rapid scale and speed. That's only increasing and increasing and increasing. Because all it takes is one bad actor. All it takes is not a few, like one. And then reputation and trust and risk all need to then get mitigated as a result.
Samir, any thoughts on the same question?
No, absolutely. See, I mean, anything you got to be very careful with. I mean, one mistake, as Kunal said, I mean, it can change things. Therefore, to me, I think a lot of it goes back to the usage, the ethics. What are you thinking about when you're utilizing a technology? What is your end goal? And if you can keep your end goal in mind, which is really sustainable or user centricity, you will do the right thing. You let it be, and you turn around and start to say, "Can I just make money and do nothing else?" That's where you start going wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. But one of the things on bias that I've tried to do, and I keep experimenting with this, of course, but one of the things that I've sort of also seen is that if you get an output which you're not very satisfied with and you re-engineer your prompt a little bit and build guardrails within your prompt itself, it will most likely give you a more nuanced sort of outcome, So that's sort of one way of using it as well.
That is true. See, anything that you do, you will have to build guardrails. It's a continuous process. So it's not as if, you can do something and it takes a life of its own. I mean, guardrails, ultimately, we started with the SRB piece. I mean, ultimately, it is all of us. And when I say all of us, I'm talking about everybody here who needs to make sure that the effective guardrails are, thought of, designed, built, and then put into motion as well.
Chandradeep, I'll start with you on the next question. And one of the sort of aspects of AI, which I think is being debated both on the industry side by the regulators, so on, is AI labeling, right? That AI-generated content should be labeled, AI assistants should be labeled. I, in fact, think it's just part of my work that AI itself is also a label in some sense today, especially for the tech players, because everything is sort of being promoted as AI-assisted today. So, just thoughts on that. Is that the right path to take? Is labeling really necessary? And I do remember that from the summary of the report that it said that, okay, we shouldn't burden consumers with over information just by labeling as well. But, whatever you've sort of seen across.
So I think a lot of the discussion that we've been having is really, for want of a better word, I'll call it the inside-out thinking. What does AI do for us as an industry, make our work faster, cheaper, more scalable, more hyper-personalized? I think any business, and definitely marketing and advertising, let's start from the outside in. Are we, by using AI, are we creating better, more responsible value for society in large and for consumers in particular? And if we do that, then our businesses will prosper. So by being faster, am I being able to do things faster or cheaper, which is actually benefiting the consumer? So I think that's a guardrail. So if I can come out with a creative work which is simply faster because I've used AI, I have more options or more hyper-personalized, but it doesn't actually negatively affect my consumer, then maybe labeling is not necessary. But if it's something that is actually potentially going to be harmful or something that they need to know and their judgment about my company, my brand, my offering would change knowing that it was human created versus AI created, then maybe it's fair to let them know. So it's really about what is right for the consumer. If it's unnecessary, then why would I load them? But If it's important for them to know and that is going to shape their decision, then it's our responsibility to let them know. I think I would look at it from the outside in. From the consumer perspective, what is the right thing to do?
I generally feel, and maybe I want to pick your brain on sort of the similar context. Like labeling itself is, when we generally hear that word AI labeling, it seems like, okay, if an output is generated, it should be disclaimed that this is an AI generated output. But that is not the only use case of AI, even in a consumer-facing sort of function, right? There are AI chatbots. There is analytics that is happening at the back end, where consumer behavior, preference is being studied and analyzed through AI tools. Now, how do you really label that, right? And that is also a consumer-facing function in some sense, right? So, just your thoughts on how should we approach labeling in general?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question. I think it's also important to distinguish the uses of AI here. So if we're talking about the use of AI in creating an ad, most likely it's not important to consumers. It's not, the word we use in the ad regulatory business is material. It's important to their decision to purchase or use the product. Just as if the great example to think about is if CGI is used to create an ad. We don't disclose that to consumers. We don't think it's necessary. So probably in most cases, it's not really important to label an ad as AI created. And we have to avoid the kind of knee-jerk response that we've seen by a lot of regulators to call for labeling of AI-created ads, because there's a sense of transparency. That's a good, so you should definitely be transparent about that. But if you think about it a little bit more, it probably doesn't make sense. And it does lead to it could lead to the issue. There's two issues. There's just the fatigue issue. If everything is labeled as AI generated, then you tune it out, and what does it mean? But there's also this notion, it's called the truth effect, implied truth effect, which is that when consumers are shown content that is, some of it which is labeled AI created and some of which is not, they think that the unlabeled content is more truthful. And so it's kind of the opposite of what you would be calling for. So that whole issue, it's important to think about what are the harms we're trying to address by labeling, and are we doing it correctly? The other aspect that you mentioned is on the back end, the analytics side, and I think that's much more complicated. Yeah. And there we go into the whole concerns about privacy, data privacy. What do consumers know about their data that's being collected and used? Should be, if it's being used to target ads, there's many laws and the movement towards requiring consumer consent for that. Certainly for, minors, youth. But because of all the concern about targeted ads, there's more pressure now to ask for consent, and so if you think about hyper-personalization and the more potential harm, potential goods as well, and you have to balance it, I hesitate. I think this is something that has to be really thought through carefully, because, again, you can't, if consumers are seeing warnings every single time, it's like the cookie banners. You get fatigue. It's just like, accept, or I don't. It becomes too much. It's not effective. It's not achieving the goal that we're looking for. So I don't know what the right answer yet is on the back end, the analytics, and how AI is being used there. I think that requires a lot more conversation and study.
Yeah, no. I think what you're saying is that at the back end there is the fatigue of labeling, perhaps, but there's also fatigue of consent, right? And Samir, I want to get to you on that point, because that's on the data and data privacy side of things. That's one of the issues that we are grappling with today in India and in other countries also, where every data protection sort of legislation, regulatory framework, at the fiber of it is consumer consent, right? But how many consents is a consumer going to give, right? How many are they going to read through, right? So there is a lot of information there. There is a lack of time and often ability to have that understanding also to what you're agreeing to and what you're not agreeing to, and how to navigate through all of that. What do you feel? How is the future around this?
No, let me pick it up from where Mary left it. The reality is that, what is the kind of information? Are you giving information? Are you disclaiming? Are you telling the consumer because you want him to know or you want her to know? Or are you turning around taking your liability off, saying, I've said it, now whatever happens is your problem? And I think that's what I don't think we have clarity today. The data privacy laws today, or for that matter, I don't think they are as developed to really understand what is really going to come back tomorrow to us. Clearly, I agree, there's a lot more to think about. AI is doing things faster than we think. We are using AI faster than we want to. Right? And we are ending up in a situation where we are seeing things where we never thought about it. So in a way, we all want to do things. We are all trying to utilize AI, but nobody knows where it's going and what all it can cause and create. Obviously, all of these things need a lot more anticipation, a lot more, kind of experiment. The laws will never, and I mean, I'm saying at the risk of being on a public platform, but the reality is I'm yet to see any law that really is able to catch up with the reality. It takes it's always, following, and it follows by a lot of years.
Absolutely.
So therefore, the fact is that, it's a mix of all of it. What do we want to tell the consumer? There is a fatigue, etc. The point is, every time if somebody tells me it's a disclaimer, I'm saying, why am I even looking at this here? I mean, what am I doing? Everything is disclaimed. Then what right do I have? Then it's just a choice. I'm going to gamble and say, "Liya, theek hai, nahi hai, too bad." Yeah, right? That's how it is. The fact is that, again, from a self-regulation perspective, I'm going to bring out all the aspects that are there. Self-regulation is for us to decide what is it that is right and wrong. And therefore, am I going back to the point that was made that, am I adding value to the consumer? Am I turning around and actually providing consumers something that is going to add value? Or am I just turning around making my own profit? Therefore, am I looking at it in the short term, or am I looking at it in the long term? Right? So to that extent, I think, every time the way technology, and especially the way AI will be there, and it's here to stay for a long, long time, I think the laws will obviously follow. We'll have to keep, chasing it till we are able to get to that point where they both are on the same place, which I don't think is ever going to happen. But the fact is that we will have to do a lot more self-regulation. We'll have to think a lot more, saying, how do you then turn around and take judgment calls to say, okay, this is something that I must tell the consumer because it is the right thing to indicate to the consumer, versus saying I'm disclaiming it because I don't want an issue coming on me.
Kunal, I'm going to move to you, and I'm going to stay with the labeling topic. I think the AdNext report says that labeling perhaps, and bases their survey and findings, that it should have a risk-based approach instead of just, as Samir is saying, just disclaiming responsibility and not using it that way. But just if we were to go down that route of labeling, and some of it already happens, I think, where do you sort of feel is labeling perhaps has the most positive impact, and areas where it may not really have any impact and therefore may not be as necessary?
So I wholeheartedly agree with the panelists on this. The reason why we need a risk-based approach is there needs to be common sense. And it has to be beyond liability. Right? It has to be about trust and responsibility. So at the technical level, things that are structured learning, deep reinforcement learning, a great example of that is the medical field. That absolutely must be labeled, because there is an incredible amount of risk that's associated with it. But now, if any of y'all in the audience receive an email from me that is more than 2 paragraphs, AI has helped me write it, and that's my disclaimer. Now, do you need to know that 22.5% of the email came from AI? No, because I'm training it to think like me. That's my productivity. That's how I'm saving my own time. That's where risk-based and more common sense has to prevail. And again, in a self-regulating body in marketing, it's up to this group that actually has to define what that risk-based approach needs to be.
I think just, and all fantastic points, of course, different perspectives. And one of the things I feel also is that what labeling does, and this is really just as a consumer or as a user of AI, a lay user of AI, sometimes I feel what happens is that it sort of subconsciously makes you believe that this is not as good or not as authentic. Like Mary was saying also, right, that, okay, this is AI generated and so it is, I don't know, somehow it is not as good, when actually it is trying to be more efficient in terms of human efforts. I guess we'll wait and see where we land on that, on regulatory guidance as and when that comes. But thanks for everyone's inputs on that. Final questions to everyone. What is the one long-term, absolutely positive impact that you all feel AI will bring in? And what is the biggest challenge, which is perhaps here to stay, and we may not be able to fix that in the long run? Starting from you, Kunal.
I'm going to say this, we're in India. India needs to be an AI superpower. It is such an opportunity ripe for the taking. India has all of the tools necessary to be able to be successful over here. And there's a recent research that has said that AI will drive the digital economy to be $1 trillion. That's 20% of our GDP. That will contribute to $4 trillion in terms of economic prosperity. Our GDP today is $3.5 trillion. We can double that. Now look beyond the headlines. What does that mean? Our GDP per capita is 2.5 lakhs. China is 10 lakhs. We need to quadruple that. How do you do that? Productivity and economic opportunity. AI is the level setter that can allow for us to do it, amongst many other things. But we need a deep partnership with government bodies, industries working together to actually achieve this. But if we do it right, we're on the precipice of something that's great.
Thanks, Kunal.
I think, one of the biggest opportunities that I feel is the fact that a lot of things will get simplified eventually. I mean, today we build our own complications as humans. Some of these things will actually get simplified. And the more you simplify, the lesser the concerns that will come. That's one. The biggest challenge, I think, is how do we keep ourselves on track, which means that are we doing the right thing and are we using it in the most ethical way? But if, and like I talked about bad actors coming in, if that kind of overpowers the rest, we are heading for disaster.
Definitely the efficiency seems like the potential greatest benefit, and both for ad creative, but also in our work in helping us to review ads as ad self-regulatory bodies. But I have to say it's maybe the regulator in me that is very concerned about how also it can make our lives more difficult, because if you can have millions of versions of an ad that's personalized to each of the individual consumers out there, how do we keep track of those? We've already moved beyond mass media to social media, and then if everything is personalized, and it's our job to look at ads and make sure that they're legal, decent, honest, and truthful, and there's millions or billions of versions of an ad, we'll have to figure out how AI can help us do that. But it also goes to the issue of even what's misleading. It's always subjective. It depends on the standpoint of the consumer who's receiving the ad. And if ads are tailored even more, I just fear about how it's going to make our jobs as regulators more difficult, to be honest.
Okay, I think I completely agree with all that said. I'm just going to join the dots. So while all the challenges and responsibility is something we've understood and agreed, we also understood the huge power of creating efficiency, speed, all of that. Now, in the Indian context, we talked earlier about how mobile phones, how UPI actually allowed us to use technology to leapfrog 20, 30, 50 years of being backwardness. I think AI, both in terms of speed and capability, but I'm also thinking now, in terms of responsibility, can actually allow us to leapfrog and lead the world. And the reason for that is, A, our knowledge of technology and how we've already used for public good, UPI being an example. B, we have a good self-regulatory body. That's why we are all here together. See the diversity. In the morning we were talking of diversity and inclusion, and here we're talking of hyper-personalization. We can marry the two, and we can actually have a much more diverse, inclusive, rather than one single monolithic view of how marketing. But as long as we keep those basic principles and guardrails in place, and we self-regulate, because we're going to move so fast that the laws will not be able to change, but to keep up. So if we keep it, and we do a better job than anybody else, then I think we have a great opportunity in India to lead the world. And I completely agree on that.
Great. Yeah, I sort of personally feel, and Kunal said earlier, that AI is the most massive sort of technology that we have ever seen today. But this discussion on how, if with every emerging technology, it sort of comes up, how it's going to change and shape. I know a few decades ago when there was no internet also and it came about, right? I was very young then, but there must have been similar discussions. But today we can't think of our lives without internet, right? And it hasn't in any way displaced jobs or, negatively impacted anybody. It's only, sort of improved our lives. And I think AI is sort of going to be the same way. So I'm really excited about how it's really going to change the way we are going to live and not just work. Our conversations around AI are still work-driven largely, but I feel eventually it's just going to really change the way we look at and live in this world. Thank you so much for patiently listening to all of us. And thank you, Chandradeep, Mary, Samir, and Kunal for fantastic inputs. Thank you, everyone.